Hi guys, Viking Reefing here. So, if you've spent any time on forums, Facebook groups, or even my own comments, you've probably seen that there are a fair amount of people who are of the opinion that reefing has just gotten too expensive these days. It's prohibitively expensive. And this is actually a subject that I have been thinking about for a while now. I went into this video having a pretty firm idea about the reason why a lot of people think this way. And my idea behind this video is that I will give you an example of a decently set up reef system where you definitely should be able to grow even acros in it. And so let's go through all the pieces of gear that you would need and see if reefing is truly too expensive these days. Oh, and a little bit of backstory on my first ever reef tank. So I set up my first reef tank. I was about 13 or so. I basically used my weekly allowance and some money I picked up doing odd jobs around the house and for neighbors and whatnot. I believe I had a 150 liter tank, so about 40 gallons, I believe, in US. I used an internal skimmer from Aquamedic. It was one of those little things with wood and air stone in it. So yeah, I've been in this quite a while. I used a couple of, well, they weren't wave makers, they were like power heads. And T8 lighting, I believe I had a T8 fixture with 3 bulbs or something. I never tried any SPS in that tank, but like softies and a couple of LPS, they grew just fine. And I was able to set that tank up as a 13-year-old, so didn't have the greatest finances. But let's go over and see how expensive is it to set up a fairly bare bones tank, which should be able to grow corals. Oh, and here's a cat. Hello, buddy. He really loves the tanks, so he likes to perch on my shoulders whilst I'm watching them. It was kind of funny. Anyways, oh, and I know that this is a divisive topic. I thought long and hard before posting this video because I thought I would kind of get some backlash from one team or the other. But anyways, so if I were to set up a fairly basic tank, but I would have confidence in the gear and the setup to be able to grow corals, this is what I would do. And since reviewing my analytics, most of my viewers are in the US, so I will be using dollars as a currency, not Swedish crowns or euros. So let's get into this. So I think a good starting tank would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 liters or 40 gallons. And when I looked at a couple of different retailers, I found this one at Petco. And it currently costs $90. I would also use a sump for this system. I found this 10-gallon tank at Petco for, well, I guess it's $21. Why do you guys from the US always love to put out prices are like $20.99? That's $21. And you're gonna need some flow. For a beginner, I'd say that you probably don't need tons of flow, since you probably won't be getting into sticks right away. You should progress through softies into LPS and then probably sticks. I looked at a couple of different models, but the SIW20s looks good enough for a tank this size. They are $75 each, so that's $150 for in-tank flow. Since we will be using a sump, we also need a return pump, and I found a J-bow pump right here, which pumps out 520 gallons an hour for $60. One part of the build where I wouldn't skimp on quality is the ATO, because, well, a crappy ATO carries with it catastrophic consequences, potentially. So I would pick up a Tunes osmolator. This is one of the more expensive parts of the purchase, so that's $195. In terms of lighting, personally, I've always recommended T5 lighting for beginners. I think that's the optimal lighting. It's a tried and true method of illuminating a reef tank, and it's extremely hard to screw up. So even if you weren't on a budget here, I would recommend T5 lighting for basically all beginners because it's just simple and it works. I went on to Alibaba, found this fixture right here. I would pick up 4 of these. They are 39-watt fixtures, and for 4 of them you would be spending 60 bucks. I'm not including shipping because people are spread out all over the world, so that's not really relevant in this case. You would also need a skimmer. I looked around at a couple of different options. This probably isn't the best skimmer in the world, but it'll probably do the job just fine, at least until you really get into reefing and you might want to upgrade into a bigger tank or something in the future. It's a Bubble Magus A5 from Fish Street, and it's $224. So that's also one of the more expensive purchases in terms of this build. And one of the last pieces of this build is that you'll probably need a heater as well. I would pick up a 100-watt Jaeger, and that's $33. And if you've kept count, this all amounts to $833 for this build. And I would probably add about $100 or something for some miscellaneous items, such as like PVC pipe, fittings, glue, and some additional tubing and whatnot for the ATO. But with this setup, you should be well on your way to be able to grow corals and grow a beautiful reef tank. So the total amount for this would be $933. In my opinion, this is pretty much in line with what you would expect to pay, say, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, adjusting for inflation. This might even be a bit cheaper, actually. So in my opinion, reefing as it stands isn't prohibitively expensive. But what I think a lot of people get into their heads is that they need top-of-the-line equipment. They need auto testers. They need wave makers that cost $300 or $400. They need a light fixture for $800. They need to buy a reef-ready tank for, I have no clue what those cost, I guess around $2,000 to $3,000. But you don't need all this to get into reefing and have a lot of success. And sure, if you look at my system, the system that I run, yeah, it costs a heck of a lot more than what we just looked at. But you don't need all this stuff to be successful in reefing. I mean, come on, no one actually needs an aquarium computer. No one needs an auto tester. No one needs super expensive lights. No one needs super expensive pumps. No one needs a reef-ready tank like this. Or no one needs a huge freaking custom tank like my big tank is. Those things are very nice, and I wouldn't want to be without them. But it's not a requirement to have a very good time in reefing and also have a lot of success. And personally, I blame forums, but to a larger extent, social media and just society as a whole, why people are just getting all hyper fixated at, oh, I have to have the best stuff, I have to have this because someone else has it, I can't be left behind. I think that's the wrong mentality to have, not just in reefing, but life in general. And I certainly hope that this video might have helped someone who's looking to get into reefing and see that there is a different way to do things. And while we are on the subject, there's also the topic of corals. I see all the time that corals have gotten so freaking expensive, it's just insane. And yeah, sure, when I got into reefing, you could buy a fist-sized acro colony for, I guess, according to the dollars, say 30 bucks, 25 bucks or something, and those days are long gone. But the perceived reality of a lot of people, I don't really see that that's actual reality. Frags aren't costing you 200 bucks a pop. Torches aren't 300-400 bucks a head or something. Yeah, sure, if you want those really fancy named stuff, yeah, that's gonna be real expensive. But no one needs a Holy Grail torch, or no one needs a home wrecker acro to be happy in reefing. You can pick up super cheap frags of like Bali Green Slimer, Miyagi Torts, Hyacinthus acros, some low or middle-end Milliporas and stuff like that for very little money. Stylophorus are awesome. Polyporus are also great choices. I mean, and people are just giving these things away if you troll local like Facebook groups and forums and stuff. And that's another thing that we should keep in mind. The list that I put together, if you would buy this stuff used, I'd say that you would probably end up spending 1/3 to half that. So I guess we come to my conclusion now. I think that the people that are saying that reefing is just too expensive are wrong. Advancement in just reefing technology has made it so that you can make reefing exceptionally costly if you want to, but you don't have to. Oh, as you might have noticed, I have a Kogoi parrotfish in this tank. It's eventually going into the big tank, but it's not feeding well enough as of yet for me to dare to throw it in with the big boys. It's a very weird fish in terms of feeding. All it eats are like minuscule particles of flake food at the moment. It eats very well, but yeah, that wouldn't fly with all my angelfish and stuff in the big tank. So it's going to be chilling in here for however long it's going to take before it just gets used to bigger pieces of food. I also don't want to introduce it on its own, so I'll wait for a time when I can introduce this guy together with 3 or 4 other larger fish just to spread out aggression. Well, I think this is all I had to say on the subject, really. I hope you found this enjoying. If you want to tell me that I'm dead wrong, you can tell me that in the comments. Love to hear your thoughts. Happy reefing and have a good one. Bye.